everyone, I'm Dr. Hinson.
And I'm Dr. Donnelly.
And we're the Good Doctors of Abbey Research. We are back to you for our academic analysis and recap of Handmaid's Tale Season 1, Episode 6. We're moving along here, getting towards the second half and end of the first season. And this episode is called A Woman's Place. And just a tip for anybody who's just joining us, we are both doctors in social science, myself in history and anthropology, focusing on imprisonment and resistance, and Dr. Donnelly's a doctorate in sociology of religion, with a focus on gender and women's experiences in Protestantism. So
we're really fun at cocktail parties.
We are so fun. Over a few cocktails. We have lots of areas of interest and expertise that all kind of meet nicely at the intersection of this interpretation of Margaret Atwood's book. So, A Woman's Place, we open with the Mexican trade delegation. Life outside of Gilead. The state of the country of Mexico still exists, everybody. And the trade delegate visits the commander's home. It's a big deal. There's a lot of pressure put on Serena Joy to make sure everything's right because she is still serving that wifely role. And the female head of the delegation, a female in a position of power.
I know, I couldn't handle that. And that they even interact with her.
I know. Questions Offred about her experience to find out whether or not she's happy being a handmaid. Spoiler alert, she's not. And Offred visits the commander's office later, but there's this tension between them now, possibly because she had wild abandoned sex with Nick the night before or a few days before. Who knows? Maybe that's why. She obeys his demand to kiss him. So we talked about kissing in the last episode recap and how it wasn't really allowed, but the commander's kind of pushing for that. And then she ferociously brushes her teeth. God bless her. That's something I would have done. I would have been like, mouthwash. The handmaids and children are taken to this great function that is also Serena Joy's. Offred's friend marks that, mentions that the delegates are only interested in meeting the fertile women, which is upsetting. When the delegates are leaving, Offred decides, you know what, I'm going to be honest. Maybe these people can help me. I can tell them something about Gilead. She pleads for their help, but the Mexican ambassador's like, I'm sorry, we can't produce children, and you are going to give us some, so I can't help you, which was shocking. But the ambassador's assistant pulls June aside before leaving and says, hey, guess what? Your husband's alive. And I can get a message to him if you so choose. So we get some flashbacks that talk about Serena and the commander's early marriage and the development of the government in Gilead, where Serena was this kind of badass cultural activist, and she was trying to be in the room where it happens while we're making all these decisions about what Gilead's going to be. And she is very passionate and very intelligent, much like her husband, but very restricted. She wrote a book about her beliefs, which is where we get the title of the episode, A Woman's Place. But once the takeover is complete, she doesn't get to read books. She wrote a book. Now she can't read a book. Great job, guys. She's completely out of the new government. And then we see a copy of her book being thrown in the trash. So The Woman's Place is redefined again. Dr. Donnelly, your thoughts?
Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, this episode.
I know, right?
So I definitely didn't see that the Mexican ambassador was going to be a woman. Definitely didn't see that coming. And her conversation with Offred made me dig my nails into my hand, because in what universe are slaves able to speak freely in front of their masters?
Right. What did she think was going to happen?
Why would she ask that question and then get pissy?
Yeah.
The questions about choice and happiness were particularly infuriating, especially when we learn later that she's there to farm children.
Right.
So, but you're the imprisonment expert. So what did you get from this?
I am. This episode was fascinating. Because the information we got about the issues facing the world outside of Gilead, I'm a big context person, as I've already told all of our dear viewers. So I'm not sure what the purpose was of having Offred battle with her conscience on speaking to the ambassador. I thought the ambassador's reaction to Offred just further confirmed how people can justify oppressive systems, really, when they're working for their own benefit. Mm-hmm. So she was happy to look the other way at what was happening in what was America, what is now Gilead, so long as it was helping the Mexican state, which is extraordinarily opportunistic, if inhumane. And clearly she was facing a crisis in her home country, and that's a real thing, and that's real context. And was able to convince herself that what was happening in Gilead wasn't a problem. And I was also really intrigued to see the lengths to which the Gilead officials would sanitize the new system in order to gain favor with diplomatic neighbors. So brushing over all the ugly bits and just like, no, it's not so bad. No, look, they have freedoms. So very much still aware of what their external perception was. By washing, cleaning up the whole society to make it look like, which we know they do a lot in oppressive regimes. They hide how oppressive they are, especially when there's international attention. And everything we learned from Serena Joy in this episode adds infuriating layers, really, to the themes of imprisonment in the show. She is in the unique position of becoming a prisoner of her own words and advocating for a system, literally writing down a system that then imprisoned her. She is complicit in creating this society where women cannot read the book she wrote on domestic feminism. Like, I was just like, and she's just like, you know what? My blue dresses are pretty. No, I don't know. I don't know if she thinks that, but I really get frustrated with her lack of give a shit about this. But it's really interesting to watch as she struggles with eventually deciding that the morality in the new religion is more important than her own agenda or her own empowerment. But as the resident scholar on women in religion, I wondered what you thought of these revelations about how involved she was in creating this society and her own system of control.
I was somehow not shocked at all. Like, as soon as it happened, I was like, oh, of course she was. Because of course she thought she'd be exempt. Of course she thought this was for all the women who were sinful, and she wasn't, and didn't realize that anyway. So the idea of domestic feminism is super ideologically religious, in my opinion. Because in order to buy that the best way to be a woman, that the most fulfilling way to be a woman is a homemaker, is deeply rooted in traditional gender roles. And this language often ignores that gender is a social construct, which is informed by biological sex, but is not determined by it. And treating gender as a biological determinant in the 21st century is rarely found outside of conservative religious circles. So if Serena Joy was rocking that in the 20th, 21st century, it's conservative religiosity. And all of her language in her flashback tells me that's how she was thinking.
Yeah.
So the world before Gilead is clearly broken. I mean, there are things that are clearly wrong. I don't think anyone's going to argue with that. And these folks feel compelled to do something about it. Fantastic. This is now where we part ways because they clearly believe a theocracy is the answer.
Yeah.
And their shallow understanding of history, combined with their belief that there were ever good old days.
Right, yeah.
So what really made me chuckle was that she created this enforced patriarchy that she believed that she'd be the exemption to. Like,
I know.
Like, homegirl. Like,
you just built your prison. Now you have to sit in it. You don't get to complain about the fact that you built it.
Yeah, like, her hubris is hilarious, but also, I mean, be really frank, really gut-wrenching, because it's something that I encounter in my own work. Like, I've met so many women who want to create a less violent Gilead, but they've never thought about the execution of that. So women who want to define womanhood entirely by motherhood, but have never stopped to think about women who are unable to bear children, or what would happen if their own child died. Like, people who create these utopias don't ever think about, well, what happens if it doesn't work?
Yeah.
And so, like, honestly, as I watched Serena Joy more and more throughout the episode, I couldn't decide if I was more or less empathetic. Like, we've been saying, like, babe, you made your bed. You made choices. Like, I'm sorry you thought yourself better than other women, but, like, extreme patriarchy only believes you are a fetal incubator.
Yeah.
Saz? Like, just because you happen to be an important dude's wife doesn't mean your incubator is any different. And in Gilead, where, like, wives can't bear children,
you don't even have an incubator. Yeah.
Like, what did you think was going to happen, Petal? Like, you're smart. Anyway, so she reclaims some agency by rethrowing this reception, even though the commander thinks it's unnecessary. And she reminds him of who she really is, that she is capable and brilliant and organized instead of this shell that their brave new world has forced her into. And I'm glad that he truly saw her for the first time in a while. But, like, and then immediately I was like, choices have consequences. Sorry, yours are crap. Like,
yeah. I totally agree with you about Serena Joy. I don't usually struggle to find empathy with characters, because I really believe that trying to understand every person's perspective in a given story, but she has to take responsibility for her actions, and she doesn't, and that infuriates me. Knowing all the power she possesses as a woman of great capability, and she sacrificed that for the ideology, and then reserves the right to be upset about her own subjugation. Like, I'm sorry, love, that is not how it works, and that is not what you get to do. Yet this whole episode, she is striving for validation and legitimization for the sacrifice she made. And it is a fascinating contradiction, if infuriating. And it's interesting to see the twist at the end and the gender flip, that it's the male assistant to the Mexican ambassador who is the one who ends up offering to help June find her family. Her guilt over lying to the ambassador like forces her into this moment of vulnerability and honesty, which we don't usually get to see. But we've been primed for what the ambassador is going to do. So we're not really surprised to see that happen. But how did you feel about that last interaction and the news that Luke is alive? He's still out there somewhere kicking it. We don't know. There was a huge emotional shift for Offred leading into the next episode.
Like, I'll be honest with you, it was an incredible amount of staggering vulnerability on the ambassador's part, too. Like, I sat like this. Like, I was really, really proud of June. And I'm also really glad the ambassador laid it all out there. Like, my country is dying. No one else has given me a viable plan, and I'm going with this one. And, like, thinking about leadership, and, like, if I was the Mexican ambassador, would I make a different decision? Probably not. Like,
yeah, I know, it's tough.
So, like, I'm reading a lot about the founding period of the United States right now, not just because of my Hamilton obsession, but because of a couple other things. And so much of her language felt really reminiscent about how the Southern states talked about slavery. Like, it doesn't matter if we're not treating them like people. We see no other option to feed our families and build our economy. And so this is where we have to go. And, like, once somebody makes that mental decision that this is the option, they'll do any level of mental gymnastics they have to do to stay there.
Yeah.
And that then sets up whole systems of oppression and keeps oppression in place. Like, well, this is what we have to do. It's now logical. And you are missing the entire fact that the fallacy you're building that logic on is a fallacy. And Luke being alive, I just feel like in the midst of all of this, like, I dropped my jaw and then I was like, of course he is.
Of course he is. Why wouldn't he be? We don't know.
But I don't even know if it's, like, it's hope for June, but I don't even know if it's hope for us, because if anyone out there believes this show is going to have a happily ever after, we need to have a conversation about dystopias. So I immediately started thinking, like, are they going to kill him in front of her? Like
is he already dead?
How is this going to break June further?
How are we going to traumatize this poor woman more?
Yeah, and then I noticed, too, that no one said anything about Hannah.
Yeah, which just that we know that your husband's alive.
Nothing about your kiddo.
Yeah, which is her whole reason for resisting and staying alive, she said in the first episode, is to get her daughter back. So,
and in the book, Hannah is the key. Like, in the book, Hannah's what Offred is going for. So,
all right, okay. Fascinating stuff. Again, a lot of really interesting context in this episode. So we will move on for now, having wrapped this up. I am Dr. Hinson.
And I am Dr. Donnelly.
We're the Good Doctors of Abby Research, and we will see you for episode 7.
Bye.